and it will show up on your page. Does she watch Facebook or YouTube?
She doesn't have Facebook, no, YouTube.
Okay,
We
let
use
me
WhatsApp,
uh,
Instagram and WhatsApp.
yeah, let me get you that. Hang on a second. I'll send it to
Something in
you.
Instagram will be, well, I can, it's a link so I can.
Yeah, I don't have oh shit. I don't have Instagram yet. I never have like jumped in there. I should have done it already. Okay, let me see here. Let me pull this up.
Yeah,
And
yeah, because we can bring your show into Katie's connected to a lot, just bloody everybody. So
okay,
I
what I'm
mean,
gonna do is how should I get this to you? Should I send it to you on Messenger or what do you think?
actually, email would be better because then I can
Okay,
drop it directly.
let me send it to your email.
Yeah, then if I can
Uh,
drop it directly into their
all right, so
YouTube, Insta,
let
whatever.
me find it here. All right, so okay. Yeah, so you know what? I'll get on that. I'll get the Instagram set up. It's already there, but I haven't used it.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, okay, here we go.
Well,
Okay,
there's a
Garrett.
couple of other shows brewing, so she'll link you into their crew, all of
Okay.
their crew as well.
Yeah, we've got some other crew members that seem to be stepping up ever since around the time we did the first show last week.
Yeah.
And there's like one, two, I know there's a third one. Yeah, there's a
God.
third one. Like since we did the show last week, 7 days ago, including you, and you know, I can feel it. Like I can feel the um, what am I trying to say? Like the synergy. You know what I mean? Like the synergy and the symbiosis of it all. And I've been talking
Right.
to these other people about it, and it's like all these pieces are kind of coming together. Who's Katie? Oh, we're live, by the way.
Katie Kiss, my great friend Katie Kiss. She's
Kiss, Kiss.
yeah,
Okay, so
right.
I'll get on Instagram and we'll figure this shit out. You know what I mean? But
Okay.
yeah, let me pull up and make sure everything's copacetic here. And yeah, I
Sorry
woke
to
up like
everyone out there. We're doing housekeeping. But
it's okay. They're used to it with Soulogy. You know,
yeah,
they're used to
okay,
the F
good.
bombs. They're used to the unprofessional. You know, for lack of a better word, because what kind of word is that? I just never been about the bells and whistles. Okay, I'm
You
gonna
know,
take.
it's all coming from the street level up, and
That's right.
this is uh, this is
That's
why this
exactly
transition is
right.
unique.
Okay, Gareth Jenkins, and there you are. I just tagged you, so it should show up on your Facebook page.
Great.
And then on all the announcements, it shows the X link, the YouTube link, and of course the Facebook link. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll add Instagram on there because I've had a lot of people ask me about it.
Yeah, yeah, I bet you have. Yeah, and people use different things, emphasize
Yeah,
different
yeah.
channels. Yeah, but
Yeah, but I think if for the crossover, because I know in the early days, 2017, 18, 19, doing this show, we crossed over a lot of communities or, you know, initiatives or movements. And then you started to have, you know, the explosion of, well, Instagram got big and a couple of other ones. And then COVID
yeah,
came and then Rumble and Telegram. So I have them all. I just haven't turned them on. I've been waiting for the right time, but it feels right now.
yes,
So
yeah,
I don't. For those of you, oh, let me make sure that we're already what 8 minutes into it. We have it. Okay, yeah, I got you up here. Okay, so yeah, what you were saying about the ground level. So let me just say this: welcome everybody to Soulogy. We've got this incredible brother with us who's kind of coming out in a way. I know he's been out, but I don't know. Something kind of special happened last week. His Wednesday, he's down under. My Tuesday, up in the northern hemisphere, and we got into the story of his experience for over many years. So very extraordinary. If you haven't seen the previous episode, I would highly recommend it. It's 2 hours. It's very informative. The depth of it reminds me of my friend Franco Di Nicola, where we did 52 shows together. We did two a month for a couple of years, and it was a different type of coding, different type of storytelling, but it was the same depth, kind of capturing some of the things that you see out there in what I would call, and I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but some of the things that you might call clickbait or disclosure topics or conspiracy topics, even. Uh, but I would say that Garrett's retelling, just like Franco's, was very much the human was present. The human is present as a player in the multidimensionality and the storytelling. And so there's a whole lot to unpack here. But yeah, so if you haven't seen that first episode, you might want to go back and see it. It was a week ago. You can see it on Soulogy One Studios on YouTube. You can see it on Todd Medina, at Todd Medina Soul, Soul, on X, or you can see it on my Facebook page, my personal Facebook page. And we're going to be adding some other platforms to it and go back to what we were doing before, where we would be multi streaming on 12 to 14 platforms each time we went out there. Um, we're fixing to expand it a little bit. So we're glad to have Gareth back. Thank you for coming back in. I'm excited to see where you're going to take us today. I don't even know where to start because of the extraordinary, parts of your story, the aspects of your story that was kind of really taking place all over the world. In Australia and in the UK, and it covered a lot of years. We talked about this group. I believe it was three people that you connected with through the magic and the miracle of being tapped into that voice that guides us all. Extraordinary story. People recognizing each other before even being introduced and knowing that one has something for the other, and then through these collaborations, develop a connection with Tom, which is like the voice of God, very very similar to me in the retelling of like Conversations with God with Neil Walsh. Who's the other one I'm trying to think of? You talked about one. I think it was Seth. Uh, it was one, and there was a couple of other ones that have been prominent where they're talking to such type of a voice. I'm not going to say it's the same voice, but so I don't know, Gareth. Where do you want to start today? Where do you think would be
Wow.
relevant? Or do you want to start
Yeah, I
with what's
mean,
going
it's
on? Do you want to start with what's going on right now and cover that, then go to the story?
sure. Well, like we were just saying before we started, it's been a pretty intense few days, and I'm having some conversations with people around the world that I've been speaking to for quite a while. I know my partner and I went through a very intense day yesterday, and I know from past experience that if you're feeling a lot and it's strong, but you can't put words to it, then usually there's been a subconscious process. So because this is a very subconscious, there's a lot about the transition the human race is going through right now, which is very subconscious. So I think popping up soon will be some like a shift in how we see things, like a bit of a shift dropping in consciously. So
I think
yeah,
that's a good segue right there. Yeah, because some of the part of the meshing of things and weaving things together is to understand the meaning of certain things, because there's so much in the light worker and starseed circles. Believe me, because I post a lot. I post a couple hundred posts a day, and I get some, not pushback. I get some, some of that, but there's always seems to be some semantical disconnect. So I think this is really important. So I'll just kind of throw my part in, and then I'll ask you the question. I know we have a day difference here. So when you're talking about yesterday, you're talking about my today right now. But really, it's all happening at the same time. Now,
yeah,
for everybody, the month ended on Sunday night. Okay, and I know that on Saturday and Sunday uh, night, and therefore Sunday and Monday, my days were very the same. But my days and nights were much the same. I'm a pretty good have a pretty good recall with my lucid dreams. I get a lot of information in lucid dreams, especially when the energy's high. And Friday night and Saturday night, I slept 10 to 12 hours straight. I had no waking up or nothing, which is rare. And I sweated like a dog, and which is not uncommon in the high intensity. And then both on Sunday, the day after, and Monday, the day after of those two nights, I was in a state of it felt like, and I don't want to get I'm not exaggerating, and I don't want to. It's not the right word exactly, but it felt like the air of a funeral. It felt like there was death in the air, and it wasn't a bad thing. It was just a very profound, deep, reverent kind of thing. And the crazy thing is, I've been house sitting and pet sitting for 3 months, and there's a male and a female cat here, and I've never been raised with animals. So it's been quite an experience. And on the second day, which would have been yesterday, I believe, Monday, uh, yes, I'm sorry, it was Sunday. That was the day, the last day of the month. They, their whole energy changed. My relationship with them, although I've been having some kind of psychic encounters with them, but nothing to write home about. I mean, it's been exciting for me because it's been new, but I've talked to so many people over the years, and I've heard, these are very common or whatever. But there was something about Sunday, the 31st, where if I walked into the room, normally they would come up to me and but they not they gave me space. It was almost like I was a noble walking the red carpet, and as I came through, they just gave me space. They were holding space for me from a very high frequency, and I could tell. And the crazy thing is, as coincidences go, I just happened to the first show of the week yesterday. I met a new sister, and she is I would say beyond animal whisperer. She's very, very multi-talented, but one of her strengths is to communicate with animals, and so that came in like a puzzle that piece that fit. But going back to what you said about the subconscious and what's happening, the difference between these, and even last night the lucid dream started to come back, but I could still feel some of the same feeling from those previous 2 nights where I remembered nothing. So last night, it was kind of a combination of both. And the other part being, which is normal for me, is where I go in and I'm working my ass off in the astrals and the ethers and the higher dimensions. And I can't always put my finger on it, but when I come back in, I can feel there's been a lot of work done, both individually and collectively. So this morning, it was a combination of both. I could feel the messages coming back, the continuity and the handoff to the awake state, but at the same time, I could tell that we were real busy. But over these 3 days, something has felt very different. And when you mention the word subconscious, that that I got a ding on that. So I'm not sure why. I'm hoping you can shed some light on it. But whatever we're doing, it seems to be like there is a reformation, reconstruction, reversal of something in the actual, in the element of our field that has a physicality, particularly this ambiguous space of brain, mind, ego, and all that stuff. So yeah, the floor is
Yeah.
yours. Thank you for letting me say all that, and I'm anxious to see what you have to say.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, that's the thing about the transition. This is what when I spoke with Tom, who is, God basically is exactly who Tom is, and that name was given specifically for a very specific reason at this time in history. But of course, there are as many names for God as there are stars in the sky. It depends on the function of the interaction at the time in history or the time in that person, the connection. There's all sorts of reasons why a particular name is given, but that name was used particularly because, and I was shown an image of this, the way the universe works, the way the human psyche works, are universal, like we're a microcosm, the way self-aware life works. You might have heard the universe referred to as a holographic projection.
Yeah.
Well, the way physics works, in the book that I was brought to called The Only Planet of Choice, which channeled Tom, spokesman for the Council of Nine. This is the name God gave. And I was led through that process you described to having a direct encounter with Tom, two conversations 3.5 months apart. Well, when I was shown the name, the actually in the book, someone asked Tom, "Where are you?" And he said the zone of cold, which in physics is known as absolute zero, 0 point. And I've been shown 0 point in terms of emotional experience, that there's a 0 point in every experience. Well, this 0 point, this zone of cold, all the laws of physics break down. Well, really, all the laws of physics come from 0 point. So it's what you call an infinite field of intelligence. So the entire universe exists in potential within 0 point, what you might call quantum space. Well, the T in Tom represents, you know, the how do you describe a cell phone 2,000 years ago description of this given in the old scriptures and the old writings. This is all over the world, by the way. In this one, it's the voice of God, let there be light. So this sound, this frequency om. So the T pillar, the upright pillar of the letter T is white light. That's white light carries all the colors of the rainbow. So that's the cross part of the T. As soon as white light came, let there be light. That 0 point, her white light coming out into form in time splits off into all the colors of the rainbow, and that forms the energy of atomic
Okay,
energy.
so just to understand it, so the vertical of the T
Yeah,
is, oh
represents
my
white
God, this
light.
is weird. I just got some, but the vertical of the T is that point is
Yes.
all that
It
is. Whereas
represents, it's a symbolic reference of white
right,
light.
right. Yeah, because I get that it's got to be translated. So when it hits the horizontal,
Yeah.
that's when all the colors come out, and that's
That's a
when the
yeah,
origins of physics and matter begins to be
polarity.
formed. In okay, I
It
got it.
creates
Thank you.
polarity.
Polarity.
So it
Okay, there you
creates
go.
0 point is the balance point in the center and it creates polarity. So there's all the colors on the red shift and blue shift. There's all sorts of ways to look at it, but all the colors of the rainbow. Now, the human race, as I said in the last conversation, is unique. We contain normally a civilization is a particularly band of frequency.
Mm,
Self-aware life, one of these areas, one or maybe two. We have all of them. And that was unique. That's unique. There's no other civilization in the universe that has that and has ever had that. That's unique. Um, but that was given because we are coming back into our the truth of who we are, our co-creative power, which is again a model of this T balance on. So that core frequency we come from, the heart connection, registers itself in the universe around us because it's all one frequency appearing as separate form. White light fractalizes out, which is, you know, Om is one frequency, white light comes from that. And then all the colors of the rainbow come from that. The physical universe comes from that. Well, we co-create reality in the same way, through the same way. We have a core frequency, and that tells us when we're stepping into the golden thread of each moment and when we're not. So it's like a guiding post. It's like a compass that guides us because we all have a finger with a fingerprint that's universal, but each fingerprint is unique. No fingerprint that's ever existed or ever will exist is identical to any other fingerprint. It's
mm.
infinite how variable it can be. So each person has their own specific way of moving through life. So we're coming back into this conscious awareness. So we gave our power away to co-create 12,500 years ago, and we've been living indirectly through a system that took that power from us and
Okay,
kept us.
let's stop there. Okay, just so we can stay up with you. Okay, you remind me so much of my friend, my beloved brother, who transitioned to Franco de Nicola, who left a huge, voluminous imprint, fingerprint on the world in his videos and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So some of this is um, weaving with that. Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand it so everybody else does. So you talked about that we have this universal expanse from the extreme of one polarity to the extreme of the other polarity, as we are that horizontal of that T, and
We
we have
represent that.
the creation abilities. Basically, we contain it all.
Mhm.
And so 12,500 years ago, which falls in line with what he talked about, falls in line with the Younger Dryas, falls in line with the flood and all that stuff. We had some type of reboot. Some people see that as an interference, and maybe that's a narrative that's within the containment of the realm that we all share and are experiencing. And I don't know that it really matters, but I guess what I'm trying to understand is there a reason that you know that everything changed at that time? Was this a choice that we all made in
Mhm.
unison to kind of, as I always saw it was kind of like, okay, we've had this, call it the Kali Yuga, or, this epic, epoch after epoch after epoch, and we end up coming like a clock.
Mhm.
It's cycle every second, but like this is the cycle that ends all cycles kind of thing. So
Yes, exactly.
as we were coming into the home stretch, somebody had the great idea of let's take this duality and make it a dualistic exponential experience that blows everybody's mind and really get the most out of it as we're going out the door. Was it something like that?
Well, I mean, yes, there's a big vast picture to it, but it is actually quite simple as well. So that's that's one thing. It's vast and it's simple all at the same time. However, yeah, 12,500 years ago, we were interfered with, um, in the sense that no one can take your free will away from you. However, you can give it away. You can be tricked into thinking you're choosing something, and that you want, but really it serves another agenda that you're not aware of. But what does that is desire. It's sometimes we can get into a situation that we want something so much we don't stop and think clearly about it. So that process was started in what we call the Atlantean age, and it built up. It took a while, and it built up over time until we reached a certain critical mass of the population chose to go down a particular route, which was ego, which started to separate ego of, separation from the heart connection, because too many individuals started to get into the sexuality of physicality,
Yeah.
because this planet is unique. It's very physical, where it amplifies the physical beauty of the feminine principle. So women were seen as very, very beautiful, much more intensely than in other civilizations or other incarnations that you can have. This is the most physically dense. Tom said that. You are the most physically dense race in the universe. So that created a double-edged sword. It
Mm.
made it it made it too easy to get caught up in the physical. And that's what happened back then. Too many people, we were master geneticists, so we amplified physical pleasure through genetics, and it just got out of hand. And that caused what Tom called the destruction, because we chose as a race to shift trajectory into the dark side of the ego, which
Right.
he called the ego that controls. So
Yeah.
we've been playing that out ever since.
Do you
We
do
made
you
that free
w-
will
would
choice.
would you say that in terms metaphorically speaking that you have the stories, and I'll just pick one of them, fallen angels, okay, or watchers, basically uh, an intermediary, and that's not what I'm getting at, between, let's just call it God and us, and that those took on some type of impression of self that they wanted to play God. So, like the lesser God rule, or maybe the lesser part of his rules, or something like that. And that there is a direct link between that and our own individual experiences. In other words, when we allowed our desires to override, let's just say, universal will and universal mathematics, etc., the desires uh, became superseded
Too
those
much of a
things.
focus. Yeah.
Yes.
And
So
we don't make an informed choice.
it's kind of a micro macro relationship. And the reason I say that is
Always.
because the reason I say that, I'll bring this up later in regard to how we come into higher alignment. But please continue.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically what's playing out right now, we're 12 and a half, we're halfway through the galactic great year, which is a 26 and a half, roughly 1,000 year orbit our solar system makes around the galaxy itself. So cycles within cycles. Like, this is what the yugas are all about. So we're at the opposite end of that cycle that we were 12,500 years ago, and that's very important, because what happened back then was polarity was those behind the interference, and really there's only one source of this whole imbalance. Where this real source comes from, which again, cell phone 2,000 years ago is described as the one that fell, which is God's favorite angel, angle of trajectory of free will. God's favorite angel sits at the right hand of God, which is left brain, which is ego. It represents the ego. Without the ego, there is no universe. When God said, "Let there be light," white light, that's the ego. The ability to perceive reality separate from the all that is, without knowing everything that the all that is knows. We don't have the words for it when we're born, but our heart knows because that's where we come from. So our sense of knowing when something's off, when it's not, when it's right, when it's wrong. When we're born, we need our mind to form around that consciousness in order for the mind to be in balance. When it
Got you.
doesn't, it overtakes, it overrides that
Yeah.
consciousness.
So let
So
me
that's
ask you,
and
let me ask
basically
you,
that pattern was set up at the fall of Atlantis. And
right,
we've been
right.
playing it out ever since.
Now, and we're on the other side of the, like that,
Now we're on the
maybe
opposite side.
9 o'clock and we're at 3 o'clock
Yeah,
and we're okay.
that's right.
So
12 and
having
6.
said that, because this is something that I've wondered about over the years, I know in my own experiences in, let's just say, other dimensions, other than after a certain point, I think we talked about this last week, like what I perceived as the ninth dimension, which was like, and this is my own interpretation. I'm not throwing this on anybody. I'm just trying to ask a question. But there was a point where I could see every perspective and in simultaneously. So that in
Right.
itself brought some kind of unity that, was I wasn't in the void, but I was in a place of that we created. And so, but between here and there, I've always noticed that there was a level of ego in the field, be it the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I'm just wondering if you could shed some light, if you could, on those aspects that are communicating with each one of us through uh, the different threads. Okay, be it angelic, galactic, elemental, etc., etc., etc. That they may have some proclivities, affinities, specialties, where they are pushing something a little bit more because that's their specificity, that's their strength, and therefore it's not in perfect balance. I'm not trying to take anything away from it. I'm just saying, are we dealing with the same pattern of the effects of the ego and the imbalances that that might bring as it's presented to us, depending on our level of soul evolution? Is that something that makes any sense to you? And do you have anything to comment on that in terms of what we're
well,
receiving?
Tom said in the book, The Only Planet of Choice, and he reiterated this to me. What's the problem facing the human race right now? Like we've all got this problem, this sense of there's a problem. What is it? He said he broke it into two categories. He said the ego that controls and lack of a belief in an absolute reality. Now, you take those two things and put them together. The ego that controls is the dark side of the ego in service to self. The absolute reality is the self, the truth of who we are. Now, the importance of this time right now and how it relates to what happened in Atlantis, that we're at the 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and that those two numbers symbolize as well mastery over the earthly plane of the physicality. In other words, getting the mind in right divine order, mastery of self, sense of self. And 6 is divine feminine. Well, this truth of who we are um, the heart comes first, feminine energy. That's the divine. Our connection to the divine is our heart connection to that which knows all. We know in our hearts when something's the right way or not. And that's very powerful when your mind's allowed to grow up from birth around that. But what happened 12,000 years ago, the fundamental nature of the polarity between the masculine and the feminine, because the masculine comes second, just like there's one frequency, everything in the universe, all biological life starts female in
Mm,
utero, and then the mutation splits into masculine and
that's
feminine. So that comes next. That's the T pillar.
right.
So first, there's one frequency called divine. Every human is divine first. That's our feminine principle, the consciousness the mind arises in. No thought can exist without consciousness being there first. So the feminine comes first. Now, the thing that happened in Atlantis was polarity. We were fed this false impression that the fundamental nature of polarity is conflict. And that's sewn into the mind control of those of the interference is the group that Tom describes that created this false, pulled us out of ourselves as a race and then kept us going. Now, remember, we chose to let them.
That's right.
They can't do it without us choosing to let
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Right. So
So
that's
so
the
at some
very
level,
critical thing.
of course, yeah. Like
Hang,
so
hang
like
on, just can we just pause a sec? Because
yeah,
I've
yeah.
got someone here. Buddy, I'm on a live call right now. I can't talk to you. What do you want? Fucking hell, man. Ah, sorry.
It's all good.
Um,
No, I get that. Like, I think so. There's so much. God, this is like I just try to stay on track. But the reason I think that's important, what you're saying is, it 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 doesn't even matter now if we were deceived in giving our power away, or we as a soul level said, "Hey, we want to jump into this arena and get the charge, or get the at least have an opportunity to potentialize it." Because the reality is, we know now. And so now that we know, as we head back to the other side, to the 12, we can apply our innate abilities and sensitivities to bring in a higher alignment, which seems to be the nature of the cause. To
yeah,
expand
that's right.
ourselves and to expand the universal. Yeah,
That's right. And I mean, that interaction just now, it's not about this sort of image we've got about enlightenment and being perfect. It's about moving through the thing that's between us and the truth of who we are, which is
yeah,
in our minds. So you're going to kind of, it's very real. It's gritty. It's sort of up and down, and it's challenging at times.
yeah,
And it's more about putting in front of your awareness what's been in the way of us dropping back into the truth of who we are. This
yeah.
thing about the time we're in now, bringing polarity back into its true nature, which is unity. That's what's happening right now. It's
Yes,
our belief system that we're not right as we are that gets in the way of that. So
yeah,
that's going to express itself through, there's moments where you appear to be the opposite of what you're trying to get to. And then
yeah,
what we do next with that, that's really important. If we judge ourselves and stay in that, oh, I was getting it now, I'm not again. Oh, no, I'm not again.
yeah,
It's really important that we find a new way to see all of that dynamic,
yes,
getting it right and wrong, dark and light, polarity, when
yes,
I'm on, when I'm off, and stopping this thing that one is exclusive to the other. You
right.
can't have unity without putting them both together, which means
That's
we've
right.
got a forum now where it's okay to be human and it's
Yes,
okay to be divine.
yes,
Tom said in the book, you insist you have a human nature. Now, we insist we have this story, this myth called human nature, which basically says, you know, people are flawed. We're trying to get better, but, that's life, that's human nature. So we write off this
yeah.
expression of this imbalance like it's natural, which it isn't. But
So
how do you get
in other
this?
words, the excuse of saying, "Well, I'm only human," is not going to last any longer. I'm only
Sorry,
human. No, I said. So in other words, the old saying and excuse, "Well, I'm only human," is not going to work anymore. I mean, it's gonna fall away as we continue to evolve.
well, I
Some,
mean,
yeah,
it is a reason. It's just don't feel bad about it. Because what
yes,
what that does is it
or don't
stops us,
judge it. Yeah, you're right. Like don't judge it. Like I
it
made a
shuts
post.
us down,
Yeah, I'm. You're right.
sheathes
You're
and shuts
absolutely
us
right.
down. That's
And
what's
we're on the.
designed to do.
Yeah, it's so funny how these physical synchronicities are happening, because I made a post today and I was talking about, I'm really tired of the prejudices and biases, etc., including in these light worker and starseed circles, right? Whatever I said. No, and I said something like, when we can get past that, then we'll all be home, so I got a lot of comments on it, and I'm not saying that I was divine and I was human when I wrote it. No, to your point, right? And somebody said to me, "Can you give us an example?" And I said, "My post is an example," because what I'm talking about is actually what I was doing. If you want to be technical about it, you know what I mean? But yeah. So that merges with what you're talking about. Somebody had a question real quick, because you brought it up 2 or 3 times. If you
Mm.
could just re-explain your reference about the cell phone. You talked about it last week and you talked about it today, but can you just kind of tell us what you mean by that
Oh,
reference?
it's just a way to kind of get the ancient scriptures back into
I see
being
what you
current,
mean.
right?
I
So
see what you
things that
mean.
are in the Bible,
Right,
things that are in the Vedic scriptures. Important to remember that we're at a very high level of consciousness at the Atlantean age. So what happened back then and why is it relevant now? It had to be put because it's very relevant. Like it's
right,
very relevant. We were shut down to a point to 10% capacity. So it was very hard for us as a race In fact, almost impossible for us as a race to hold that awareness of what actually happened. Because, we need to understand basically what happened back then and put it into the current context. So the way that was done was put into a code, symbolic language. So the analogy I'm just using is, how do you look at that ancient symbolic language in a way you can read in the modern era? Think
Yes.
of think of it as a description of a cell phone 2,000 years ago
I
is
got you.
fundamental.
I got you.
If
I
you
got
if
you.
you went back in time 2,000 years ago and you tried to describe what a cell phone was, how are you
Right.
going to do it? You can't just say it's a cell phone. No one's
Right.
going to understand a word you're saying. You've got to put it into a symbolic language that can be decoded later. So a lot of that stuff was done. For instance, one thing in the Bible, which again, I'll reiterate, Tom said of the Bible, it is your word book, not mine, yours.
Yeah.
He just said, he called it your word book. So it was a tool for misinformation, but they have to put the truth in,
Yes.
because free will is the golden law of the universe. So they have to include the truth, but bury it in. It's like baby bathwater. They put so much bathwater around, it's very hard for us to put two and two together.
Right.
But that code was done with that strategy in mind as well. That was known ahead of time, how those of the interference operate with taking control of the narrative. So a lot of these codes were put in there to survive that process at the right time in history. So one of them is the fourth beast shall rise from the sea. This came out of the Old Testament. The Old Testament's important because it was connected to the ancient stuff that was written down post Atlantis and given to the Romans,
Yeah.
given to the Egyptians. All right, so a
Yeah.
lot of stuff came out of that. Now, the fourth beast is corporations. Rising from the sea is admiralty law. So once
Right.
you see that, you take away the religion. The only people who say things like that are religious. No, they're not.
No.
It's
And
important
that
to
was
get.
written, that was, I mean, because we're talking about like, 1,000, 1,200, 800 years prior to the age of Jesus. I mean, the Old Testament is old, old, right?
Oh, it's way older than that. Yeah,
I
like
mean,
all
where it came from is Egyptians and beyond the Egyptians. But I mean, I'm saying this is old.
Atlantean, yeah.
Yeah,
It was,
Atlantean.
it
Yeah,
goes through eras where it gets reinvented and pulled back
yeah.
in, and it's like Chinese whispers. Things can kind of get interpretations get layered on top of it. But again, the language was made very simple so that it can be transferred through all the epochs and survive intact enough for this time. And that's
There's
part of.
Yeah, there's so it's so wild watching the divergent, I'll say divergent, even though the intention I would believe uh, in the vast majority of those that are expressing these things are looking to uh, get to unity consciousness, get to oneness in the physicality. And although we're working out all the bugs with our humanity and our self judgment and mutual judgment and all that stuff, but so there's a lot of prophecies and projections, and this is what's going on, and this is what you need to do. How do you feel about where we're at? We're at 6 o'clock. We're halfway from what you're describing. I guess our last big hurrah in Atlantis. We're following kind of the same pattern, or we're remembering what happened. So I guess to make new decisions as we come from the 6 to the 12. But how do you feel we're doing? Do you have any idea of where we're headed? And I don't mean like prophecies or predictions. I just mean like how are we doing as one soul? I guess you would say one humanity. What are your feelings on that?
Oh, it's inevitable. We're coming back to the truth of who we are, which is five dimensional. So but again, what happened? We went from 5D to 3D. That is now being reversed, and it's again through free will. So we are coming back to who we were before the fall, with all of the knowledge of everything that happened between, which is the first time a physical race has ever gone through that process in the history of the universe. That's never happened before. We've been almost completely inverted.
Mm.
And I say almost because we've held light
Mm.
almost completely inverted, and we've held that all the way through the last full half cycle. They've tried everything, those are the interference, everything they can to break our spirit, which is what Tom described as the fifth dimension spirit.
Hmm.
to break our connection, our heart connection to the universe through us giving our free will away. They
Wow.
had to get it done by the opposite end of the great year. They had to be at a point where
Oh,
they were,
they had to do it by the sixth. They had to do
they
it by
had, see, they had to get, Tom said, someone asked Tom, well, what are they trying to do? What's the goal? And he said, they're looking for a way to make the transition with you. So they shut us down
so
to
these
3D.
yeah. So these forces don't have the capability or the connection to that which we came from, which we could say the light,
The
right?
one that fell is a symbol of the ego that controls. In other words, the ego is separate from consciousness, which can't happen. The ego,
Right.
the thought I can't exist
Right.
without consciousness being there before,
Right.
during, and after that thought. But that's
Right.
what the ego that controls tries to do, based on fear or the need to be separate
Right.
and and one. So the only way to do that is to replace God through a
Yeah.
physical vehicle, a light space vehicle, and that's been the plan of the one that the so-called one that fell, which
Right.
is which is delusional. You can't be separate from God. Everything is one. Everything is unified.
Right.
However, that delusion has been playing out within the universe for so long now that it's caused a foundational imbalance in the relationship between dark and light that's universal to the universe. So it's
Wow.
been at a point in the history of this universe that something needed to be done to counter it, which
Yeah.
is why the human race was created in the first place as a
Mhm.
trap for the one that fell. So
Ah.
the
So
way that happens,
it's actually the opposite of what's been what's been stated.
we're at the opposite end. It's
We
the
were
opposite. Exactly. That's what they do. They invert reality.
right. Right.
So it's the
Um,
opposite. We're the ones with the power.
Of course. And so it's profound as I've, reflect on the journey of the last 14 years and, say these 4,000 shows that hearing so many people's stories of what we call the dark night of the soul and how their abilities and memories turned on simultaneously as they continue to push forward in the dark night of the soul, which ultimately means they would not give up their light. So we're doing this as individuals and we're doing this as a collective. And you're saying that they had until 6 o'clock halfway to get what they wanted done, and it's past that time now,
Yeah,
right?
because
Yeah,
of the impact it has on the sun, but and also symbolically what it represents, us mastering the physical plane, us mastering the physical plane, which was always what self-aware life coming into a light space vehicle called a body mind in a particular planet for a certain amount of experience is just mastering and having the experience of separation and unity in the physical, coming back into unity through an illusion of separation experience, whatever the planet is. That's just the nature of life. That's what reality is meant to be about. It's just that our incarnation now is about reversing the inversion as well, which is designed to make that the opposite experience. So we're having to go through a process of reversing the inversion with our sense of self and reality. We see things the opposite way to the way they really are in a lot of foundational ways, and that's shifting it subconsciously. So we're going through a massive paradigm shift, the biggest paradigm shift in the
yeah.
history of the universe.
I put up another post today. It was the gentleman, the brother I was talking to you about earlier, Franco. After he transitioned in 21, he came to visit me a few times, still does now and then. But in these early visits, the thing that stuck with me the most that he said was at some point when this happens, and it feels like we're close, but like everything that you believed is not true. So when you're talking about the inverse of it, and he used to call it the inverted matrix, but he said everything, every belief that you have, you know, from the experience is not true. Like it's a whole different thing, which to me, listening to you makes sense to me because we're looking at the direct, uh, I guess in a way you would say opposite, but it's kind of hard to say opposite when where we're headed back to is actually all there is. That's our true nature. That's the true nature of the universe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what Tom described to me about this time. Now he said we are reversing the inversion with you. So both with our help and with our sense of self. We are reversing the inversion with you. We are bringing you back across the valley you should not have crossed, the
Mm.
valley of the mind. So that's why this 12,500 year cycle I was shown, it looks like a valley. So we left our true nature. The ego flipped in front of the heart connection. So the ego came first. What the ego desired came above our heart connection, our sense of knowing. And that's played out. That imbalance is played out, reflected in the physical, because we created from that imbalance. So civilization,
Mm.
subjugation of the feminine, all followed that pattern. The way children grew up, we're born with the feminine, masculine in the right order, and then we go through a socialization process that flips that inverted. That's why
Hmm.
the Nazarene said, "Give me a child till they're 7, and I'll show you the man," meaning the ego in service to self. Get in the way of that while a child is in that fetus state, that is actually from 1 till 9. If that process is allowed to play out throughout that 1 to 9, then it becomes locked in. The ego in control locks in. So all kids go through that, and then we express it. We push out the imbalance within us and project it on the world around us. Because remember,
Of course.
we're made in the same image as the universe.
Right.
So the ego projects the imbalance out there. It's everyone else's fault. And we try to make our life work by fixing everyone and everything around us.
Right.
That's the ego that controls. Doesn't
Right.
work. The only way our life will change is when we realize that the belief that it all has to change is something we hold, which is not true. It doesn't have to change. It's perfect as it is.
Right.
We make the assumption that through that programming period we go through 1 till 9, we make the assumption that we aren't right as we are, therefore the world isn't right as it is.
Right.
And the imbalance that creates within us, because we are who we are, and the belief system flips that in reverse. We aren't love. We are love. But if we aren't right as we aren't lovable as we are. We need to come into a form that is acceptable out there. But that makes us judgmental of what's acceptable and what isn't. And that gets built bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as an adult until you reach a point where you can't keep functioning that way because you can't feel anything anymore. And that's what's happened to a lot of people over the
Yeah.
last decade. So coming back to who we were before that happened is what the human race is doing as a whole. And those of the interference trying to stop that from happening till we got to a point where we were willing to um, separate our heart connection to the universe fully.
Mm.
That's what's represented by COVID, for instance. That's what that choice point was put there to put in front of us to trick us into choosing that final step as a race. One choice the whole race makes to go into
Really?
slavery.
So
Yeah,
that
because
was
it's a
that
separation
it
of
had to
four
be
species.
it had to be unanimous 100%
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Well, not 100%, but enough critical mass.
Yeah.
See, 100th monkey effect works by it's a ratio.
Of course.
That was the 100th monkey effect, if you don't already know it, was named that because of a population of rhesus monkeys or a species of rhesus monkeys. They used to wait for coconuts to drop off the tree and then hit the ground, and then they would pick up stones and keep on hitting the coconut until it broke open. So naturalists were studying, this was about 100 years ago, I believe, one population on an island. And then they noticed there were some different island groups. So there was the same species on a couple of islands, and they were on these different islands at the time. One of them noticed that one monkey climbed a tree and dropped a coconut onto the rocks, did it the other way around, which is way more effective because you use the impact to break it. You only have to drop it once, mostly. So other monkeys saw this happen and they started to do the same thing, and it spread through that single island so that behavior shifted.
Yeah.
And then it got to a certain ratio of these monkeys, and and the other population started to do it.
Yeah.
Now, how did they know? They didn't have contact with them. So somehow
Right.
this new understanding, as soon as it hit a certain number of individuals within that species, it started to spread throughout the species, no matter where they were geographically. And it actually spread around the world. So rhesus monkeys, the entire
Right.
species changed the way they did this simply because enough of them saw that new behavior. So that's the same with human free will. If enough
Right, right.
humans choose the dark, which is what happened in Atlantis, the whole race has to go into that direction. It's a
So
certain trajectory. So you have free will to choose your trajectory through life as an individual, but the race as a whole also chooses how it moves through the big picture cycle. And
right,
that's
right,
what the Kali Yuga was. It was that we had the potential to move through the Kali Yuga in divine right order, or to go through it in the inversion process. So those are the interference. They used that cyclical energy point to. That's why they came in at the time they did, because the energy was possible. It was possible. It was ripe or fertile for them to get us to choose the inversion. Whereas
right,
at a different point in the cycle would have been a lot harder.
right.
But it didn't mean the Kali Yuga doesn't mean we have to go through the dark side of the moon. It just means there's the potential to do that. It depends on your choice. So the
Mm,
human race chose to go through the darkest version of the Kali Yuga as a race, which meant every individual had to figure out a way through that as well. And there is a
which makes
way,
sense. Yeah.
but now we're at the opposite end of that choice point, and we reached critical mass to choose to wake up to the full truth as a race in 1997. Since then, it's inevitable.
Okay. So
Yeah.
listening to you as well, just to kind of get my ducks in a row, um, if I look at some of the sacred text, we'll stay with the Bible. Okay. Uh, when those, if you look at Revelations and other similar texts speaking of this time, uh, it would make, and like you said, in those types of text, the truth is there. It's just been it's just been kind of shrouded and complicated with things, but it's there, as you were talking about with what Tom told you. But these predictions and prophecies of this time, it would seem to me that those things, and I'm not talking about the fourth beast, like that I can get, like the corporations coming out, but I know in the Bible it talks about rumors of war, almost like it's a false presentation or something like that. In other words, do you feel that texts such as that, and in particular that, when they speak in Revelations of this time, that that is a type of propaganda to try to control our mind, to send us that direction, that those things have to happen, or do those things have to happen?
Oh, it's well, that for instance, rumors of war. I mean, it's painting a picture of how those of the interference will use the control narrative to steer our choice point, but also it's a way to give us the signs to look for, the symbolic language of what's playing out in our own direct experience, because that's always happening.
Mm,
There's our own single choice point, how we move through life and how life communicates to us when we're on and off. How
I
we
got you.
receive that. There's always a symbolic language happening for everyone all the time. It's a matter of reading that. So it's just a way to do that.
Yeah,
It's
I
it's
see what
just
you mean. So
it, it then it,
it's equally referring to collective wars such as Ukraine, etc., but also the energies presented as we make these choices and experience life within our own, let's say, family relationships. You have these energies to contend with, or these symbols that they're telling you about to let you know this is what's going to be out there. Something like that.
well, the rumors of war thing it's more about the threat of World War II, World War III,
Three.
global annihilation. That's the thing about this end. What's referred to as the end times. What is that? It's been painted by religion deliberately to create fear.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Fear is the main tool, self-doubt and fear. That's what they do. But it's not the end of the world. The end of time refers to, Tom said, we do not have the time said by men. So a sense of time. Time is actually a doorway between the spiritual and the physical. Time is what allows, that's why T was used as well as a symbolic. What allows polarity to exist is time, the ability to have a separate moment from another moment.
Mm,
In the quantum field, there is no separation in time. When you put 2 points, when you divide time up, you create the ability to have separate experiences. That's what creates the illusion of separation. So time is the critical thing.
right. Right.
But it's fluid. So if you put time next to the fifth dimension, it becomes extremely non-linear. The closer time gets to the fifth dimension, the less linear it gets. The closer it gets to the third dimension, the more linear it gets. So it's
Yeah.
both and neither. It's time is a
Right.
doorway. What
Well,
happened in the fall was time became a barrier, very linear. Our
right.
mind could only wrap its head around the moments being separate. So we disconnected from our true nature. Now you can't. The truth of who you are is untouched by any of it. That's what Ramana Maharshi said. The Arcturians brought Ramana Maharshi into my life in the late 90s, early 2000s, and called that true north. So the way back, at 6 o'clock, to reversing the inversion,
I
how do
got
you
you.
do that? The 12 o'clock point mastery is self-inquiry. Who am I being? What am I? What's the point of view I've got about all the conflict in my life? What's the real truth? Is it about them being wrong, or is it my point of view is off? So the path of self-inquiry turns your attention back into the assumption that you aren't right as you are. That's the ultimate goal. Yes, you are. But the only way
Yeah.
you're going to know that is to go back in time to the moment where you thought you weren't, when
Right.
you were a small child. But remember, that moment in time replicated itself through so many experiences from the age of 3, let's say, all the way through to 38, 58, whatever.
Right.
That it's not just one experience, it's massive.
It's like an echo or a ripple.
Yeah, so you have all of these parts of yourself locked in time that believe you aren't right as you are.
Yeah.
So you can't just go to a workshop and hear Ramana Maharshi say the truth of who you are is untouched by any of it and go, great, perfect, all done, job. It doesn't work like that. What happens next is all the times where you don't know that need to be
Yeah.
brought into that
Yeah.
realization, one after the other. That's what life does.
Yeah. I wrote
So that's
another one. I,
everyone's directly experiencing their own sense of self being reversed from the inverted version back to the truth. That's what your own, everyone on this call, everyone around the planet right now, that's the only thing that's happening. Their own
yeah.
direct experience of being brought back in time to the truth of who they are.
Right.
And
That makes sense.
um,
I wrote another one today, and I talked about that. In just kind of in to surmise it, it was in a way it was like it's easy for us to go align with our light. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Regardless of how accurate we might be, but you know what I'm saying? That's a very easy thing. But it's these demons, and these are just metaphorical words: demons, devils, the darkness. These are like our inner child, our inner children. These are the places that we go, and they need our love. They need our attention. They need our focus. They're us. They're us. And so, listening to you, I can understand why that streamed through me today, because and then also with what you're saying, which I hadn't thought about, uh, and I should have, because as the individual goes, so goes the collective. But if I look back at this past summer, for instance, I can see where, of all the things I've seen in the field with the work I'm doing, you're exactly right. This is what people are doing. They're going back to these places to find out that they are whole, that their perspectives and perceptions came from these experiences that continue to like cookie cut through their life, and they're, I guess, reclaiming our power, reclaiming the love for ourselves in that process.
yes, well, I mean, that's the thing. The thing about this process is we can't control it. And letting go of control is the best way to meet the transition process that's happening right now. But it also takes you straight back to the reason why the problem exists in the first place, which is the ego that controls.
Right.
Letting go of control when you're right in the middle of an experience which is triggering every anxiety, fear, and seeing that that's wrong. That's the inversion. No, it's perfect. See,
Right.
lining up with your light, that's easy. It's lining up with your darkness that's hard.
That's what
But
I'm
what is
talking about.
darkness?
Yeah.
Darkness is really, in physics, it's just an absence of light. We make an assumption that we're wrong and we give that form through experience. We look back on the history of our lives and we think we see a whole series of experiences that proves that premise right, that we aren't quite right. If I had been less this or more that, la da da da, we've got this whole story based on it. But the whole thing's an assumption. So
Right.
we've been living an indirect experience of life the whole time. And this is the key with
False.
Ramana. harsh in a path of self-inquiry is go back and look at the assumptions directly. Is it true that you aren't right as you are? Is it true that if you go into this experience that it'll be negative to you?
Right.
Well, why don't you go and find out? And
Right.
the only way to do the spirit with which you need to go and find that out in is to not just believe the story your mind's spinning about what's happening right now while it's spinning it, to
Right.
not just let the feeling of fear or self-doubt be the only reference point for the reality of that moment while you're feeling it. Now, the thing is, you've got no alternative. All you've ever known is self-doubt and fear. All you've ever known in these experiences is the way it feels, and that feels real. The idea that that's an illusion and that there's a deeper truth to the reality, but that's you're just phoning it in for a long time, for a long
Yeah.
time. But the fact is that the only way to get to a direct experience that you are perfect as you are right now is to go through all the moments where you don't believe that
Feel it.
and to be held there until you're over it. It's
Yeah.
like, you know what, I do have the ability to meet life in any particular circumstance. You go through a process with your family, for instance, relationships in your family, and we're all going through that for a while now. Because the human race uh, chose to wake up to the truth, all of us are going through that process, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
It
That
doesn't
part.
matter where your opinion is on COVID. It doesn't matter where your opinion is on anything. Every human on the
Mm.
planet is being brought through the process of seeing firsthand directly the reality of why their life has been the way it has, which is the way we think about everything. That's the only problem anyone's got, how we think about us and how we
Exactly.
think about everything.
Yeah. Our
Tom said
belief.
of this
Yeah.
process, it's better for you if you choose it, but it's happening anyway.
So you're really onto something because, and I think we talked about this last week. There seems to be a lot of connectivity, just like after our show 7 days ago, and then having these pieces, like begets like people being on the same wavelength. It's kind of I don't want to go into the intricacies of it, but in general, you get what I'm saying. Like this is happening really fast in real time. So now you're talking about this, and you had asked me about the weekend thing, and I said last night, the third night was a little bit different because I had some recall with the lucid dreams, and I can't remember them now. Okay, I'd have to go to my notes, but I do remember the feeling. And so, as a result of that, I guess of the 3 nights, I spent a considerable amount of time today in that state that you're talking about. I was in a pissy state. I was sitting on the bed or laying on the bed, and the process, and there's no coincidences, but the process was just as you said. It started with I can't project it on this person or this occurrence or this or that. I brought it back into myself. There was some self judgment. There was some get me the hell out of here. And then I guess it evolved into just feel it. Just like you felt your emotions in the past and you equalized them, just feel it. And I did. I felt it. It felt gray. It felt not obscure. It felt like it came from a place that was obscure within me. And I don't know how long it took. Maybe it took an hour. Maybe it took an hour and a half. It lifted, and once it lifted, I went into like my soul took over, and I went to work here, and I just started working. Boom, boom, for probably 4 or 5 hours. So, like what you're talking about, if it's happening to one person, it's got to be happening to everyone. That's always been my thought. That's what my soul has told me. But listening to you now, you're actually affirming that. You're saying that this is happening. This is the meat and potatoes, and it's happening to each and every one of us.
Yeah.
That's the common denominator in this transition we call ascension, basically.
The human race is transitioning back to our true nature, and that's the human race as a whole. So you might have heard of the split earth thing. That's a very popular
Mm-hmm.
thing. Now, there's truth to it. There is truth to it. However, a lot of people have taken what that really is. A lot of people in the truth community have taken that a little too far, really based on the perception that they can't understand how the people who are completely anti anything we're talking about are going to go from where they are now to understanding what we're talking about. It's more about most people can't understand how the rest of their family or how those people out there are going to make this transition because they can't see that it's cognitive dissonance.
Right.
Then they have to come up with a mental framework that lets them go through it and deals with that problem somehow. So we come up with this split Earth. That there's going to be two versions of the planet. One where everybody thinks everything is the way it is in 3D, and one where everybody doesn't.
And it's really not that way.
That's not really the case.
It's
No.
really we're at the halfway mark, and from your perspective, which is a kind of a linear perspective, it might look that way. But the truth is, it's a cognitive dissonance both ways.
Well, cognitive
Because
dis.
if I'm looking at these people over here, I'm ignoring their spirit, their soul, and so that is, in my opinion, that's my
Yeah,
own cognitive dissonance. Just as I think they're cognitively dissonant,
yeah,
but the
exactly.
reality is we're all. I've always said this. Maybe we're all beating at the same vibration. It just doesn't look that way, and
That's
we
the
think,
whole thing, exactly. I mean, the thing is, remember, the polarities, it's embedded because of the way controlled narrative has worked, particularly in the modern era, but throughout history, it's embedded in our psyche that polarity is about conflict. So whenever something is opposite to us, we're in conflict with it as a knee-jerk reaction. We don't sort of stand back
right,
and use objectivity.
right,
And that's the masculine principle. Give me a child till they're 7. Give me a boy. Give me a mind from birth until the age of 7, and I'll show you the sacred masculine principle in all its glory, the way to hold the belief system, which is objectivity, the ability to stand above a situation and assess it clearly with clear sight, see it
yeah,
clearly. First law of problem solving is to know what the problem is. Emotional reactionaryism keeps pulling our attention into the story and flicking it off everywhere.
yeah,
That's 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 the 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock thing. The divine feminine is emotional intelligence, the ability to feel a feeling, do what you did. Hold This is what Ramana Maharshi said, meet the feeling and doubt the story. But you got
right,
to hold yourself in that. You got
yeah,
to, he said, the only thing you can control is where you put your attention.
yeah,
So your story, the reflex is we think we are our mind, so we don't challenge the thinking. It just feels like us being right about what we're seeing. We don't even
right,
stop
right.
and think, hang on a minute, maybe my point of view is the problem. So now we've got a
Yep,
reference
that's
point to
right.
get our, but I don't know, I can't see how yet. But we've got a question. Tom called the body mind, God called the body mind a receiver. We've got to question, well, what's the truth here? What am I really feeling and what am I really seeing? And why is it the story? What is that all going on? Now it's a tough place to be. That's where we're all at. It's questioning everything you think you know about reality, including yourself. And that's not easy because we've lost our complete sense of direction, which is why they call self-inquiry. The Arcturians describe it as true north. Now,
Mm,
when you're holding your attention, remember, circle, sun glyph with the balance, the 0 point in the middle of the circle represents the tumultuous spin of emotional reality with the ego watching it, with the ego in service to self. So that question represents what Tom said, add a fifth element, the truth of who we are. We keep pulling our attention back. Okay, yeah, but what's really going on? I'm feeling this feeling and I'm looking at everything this way. But maybe there's a deeper truth. The act of doing that rearranges your subconscious because
okay.
that represents all the parts of us stuck in time, all the childhood experiences we had that we never had the ability to process. That emotional energy is frozen in time. So by asking that question, we make it fluid again, because that's what questions do. They draw the answer. So all those frozen in time, the control mechanism draws conclusions to lock threats in so that
Right,
we can feel like we're safe.
right.
But once you ask that question, of course, you're challenging your feeling of being safe. So there's a whole range of emotions that go with this. Think of it as a detox. All of
Yeah.
that muddy water has to be cleared out. That's all.
That was that gray, obscure uh, film or whatever that was. And you're describing exactly what happened to me in better detail than I did. Because what happened was and of course we've all been through it, right? But this was at a different level.
Going through it.
This was at a higher level, and a high enough level that I was going, you know what? I don't know about this. I don't know that I want to go through this anymore. I think I'm just, and this was a short lived thing. However, in my thought process from my soul, that the soul I am said, you can replace these thoughts with another thought. And so then I struggled with that, which is what you just made me remember. And I thought, well, okay, I'm a soul, and I'm a fractal of the the fluffy love and light kind of stuff. And then I kept hearing, no, 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 just it's unconventional, it's atypical, it's not logical or rational, but sit here and shut the fuck up and just feel yourself, mind, body, soul. And
Well,
so that happened, and then that's when the gray thing came. It was like came out of the crevices and the far corners of my field, and it lifted, and then the tingles, like the tingles from the feet to the head, the arms, everything just started tingling. I thought, okay, okay, that was
now
new
we,
for me. I'm going to say that was at least at a minimum a higher level of something I'd experienced before, but I would say an exponential difference. And if that's where we're headed, I could see where there would be wholesale changes in the individual lives of people. No more 9 to 5s, no more, because it's the same pattern, right? I'm doing this because I'm not good enough, so I gotta go be a better father. I gotta be a better earner. I gotta be a better partner, and it
whatever
turns
that is.
into, you know what I mean? It turns into, hey, this is really what's going on, and the best thing I can do is, even if it makes no sense in the old world, is sit on my bed for 6 hours and get my shift together.
Yeah, get my shift together. I like that. Yeah, well, look, and that's the thing. What we've hit a new phase of the transition, and one thing. Well, 11:11, right on the money. Yeah, that's
You can't make
that's
this stuff up. You cannot
yeah,
make this
and
stuff up.
well, this one of the things Tom said to me in '97 when I was there with the other twin flames, part of this twin flame soul network. He said, um, the manner of transition of the human race has never been attempted before in the history of the universe.
Say that again.
The manner of transition of the
Okay.
human race has never
Right.
been attempted before in the history of the
Right.
universe.
And that's
Now,
referring to the density and the density of the physicality transforming from, like, say, matter to light or something like that.
or how we move there are nine fundamental dimensions. Nine is completion, then it repeats. It's a repeating pattern. However, there are nine dimensions: one, two, three, four to nine. But the balance, it's not in a line from one to nine. We don't start at one as a soul and evolve one, two,
Ah,
three, four. When we come into the universe, it's a T. We start at the fifth dimension and radiate out. So all self-aware life is five-sided, and to the left side is time in the three physical dimensions: four, three, two, one. All
so
self-aware life has five, four, three, two, one. Then our awareness of that, what that means, moves us through five, six, seven, eight, nine, and then together we make 10.
yeah.
Tom said, we are not God, you and us together make God. So us coming back into full unity
Mm,
with all the aspects of the universe is what makes everything one in our experience. So dimensional shifts, all races have made them. However, and the higher you go up into nine, you take that template of the first five dimensions and you repeat them through the next four. The higher you go, the less physical you get. But what's different is no race has been shut down below the time barrier to only being aware of themselves as physical and separate,
wow.
and then come back up through free will. That's never
Wow.
happened before. The only other time it happened this way, which is in normally transition is death. There is no death in reality, you simply change form.
Hmm.
So normally to transition like this, a race would have to um, change form, be reborn into a new form, or an individual would die and be reborn into a new body, but at a higher dimensional frequency because they've made that jump.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is we're staying as the human race is right now, the planet is right now, and expanding up into 5D. The only other time that's happened is when the Nazarene transitioned. And that's
That
exactly part of why he did what he did.
that's interesting. I do a lot of research, and I can't recall what this was, but I think it was a um I think it was maybe a remote viewer or somebody that had some psychic some psychic attributes, and they were talking about. In fact, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was this man that just passed, and he was a scholar, and he was kind of controversial. I can't remember his name, but he was talking about, and I thought of you. And here we go again with these coincidences, these synchronicities. Uh,
Yeah.
he was talking about the Essenes. He was talking about Yeshua. He was talking about Magdalene. He was talking about John the Baptist. He was talking about some things that I've heard, but his part was a little bit different. Maybe that's why he's considered controversial. But he said that his name was that his sect of, I guess, subsect of the Essenes or whatever his group was, they were called the Nazarenes. They were not. He was not Jesus of Nazareth. He was Jesus the Nazarene. Okay,
Yeah.
and I thought, whoa, he just told me this. So you
Yes.
know, I'm thinking,
Yeah.
why am I hearing this now? But
That's the thing. Yeah, the information and awareness Tom said about it, all of it, the whole awareness of the Nazarene, exactly everything that happened, who he really was, who was around him, how that played out, the purpose behind it, everything. It was all written down. It was all kept safe. And Tom said it has not been kept in vain.
right,
So they buried. There are dozens of sites throughout the Qumran system, for instance, with texts that were deliberately transcribed and buried, but it goes way deeper than that as
yeah,
well. So all the information is there.
yeah.
The answer to the question, what's the truth? It's all ready to go. It,
You know what? And now that you said that, because you told me that last week too, I remember. You touched on it. He said the same thing. He said that
yeah,
he said for
it's not
whatever reason, I think like from the Tower of Babel time, I think that's what he cited, like that time frame. He said from that point forward, be it the Cathars or Templars or whoever these people were, that they were actually putting this in, coding it into many different streams for the preservation of it. It's
yeah.
exactly what you just said, which is mind blowing.
And that gets back to sites like Göbekli Tepe, which were deliberately buried before the destruction to preserve them, Easter Island, the Moa. There are several sites that haven't been discovered around the world yet where they've done that. They deliberately buried them. Now, again, the T pillar in
Right,
Göbekli Tepe, that's
right.
a model for the universe. So when you build something that way, it takes the frequency of the planet, the coarse human resonance, and guides it into a particular form. So that place, it was a meeting point for cultures throughout the colonies of Atlantis. There were lots of different, because it was a federation.
Yeah.
You know, the
It was,
human
yeah, it wasn't like a one
race.
place. It was all over the place.
It
Right.
was it was one place made up of a unified federation of sovereign areas. So it was one civilization made up of but each race, each culture didn't lose its identity by becoming a whole part of the whole. The
Exactly.
whole was made up of a mix of all of those
Right.
identities. That's the divine order of civilization,
Right.
by the way. And one thing,
And yeah. I mean, every like even us, like say those of us who are incarnated in a body, we're all a piece of the puzzle. You know, in other words,
yeah,
it's not complete without me, but I'm not complete without it, kind of thing. I mean,
exactly.
you know what
I
I
know
mean?
it's
Yeah.
important to know. That's where polarity being about unity comes in. I mean, like I said, I was struggling with speaking to people about my soul purpose or just being myself because of what it involved, being a
Right.
twin flame
Now,
connected to the bloodline of the Nazarene.
let me ask you
How do you
let me
say that?
yeah, let me ask you about that. That's the second time you brought it up. You brought it up last week, and so are you okay to go 2 hours again? We got
Yep, fine. Well,
another
as long
four.
as you
Okay,
want.
thank you very much. I appreciate it. Um, the twin flame thing that has been like everything, misconnotated. It's been, it's been
Yeah.
modified. It's been, whatever.
Mm.
What from your perspective, from what you've experienced, what you've been told, what exactly is that? Is that an energetic connection that is more than one let's say in an incarnation that connects and therefore amplifies true universal power, something like that. What is that in the context of our journey, especially this day and age where it's been so convoluted?
Yeah, well, the twin flame soulmate system was set up by when the Nazarene, before he transitioned, he told his brother James, the righteous teacher, who was given the job by the Nazarene to take over from him, basically, to hold it. He told him and the Magdalene to marry and have children, to set up a physical lineage, because yes, the Magdalene had children, but not by the Nazarene. He wasn't capable, he wasn't physically able to have children because of the way his DNA was put together. But the Magdalene was chosen because of her link to the time when the Nazarene set up the civilization and the human race. He was called the Hawk. So he was um, the central figure. The Nazarene was the central figure that oversaw the seeding of planet Earth, that put the human race together in the first place. And he also set up the civilization of the Atlantean age. And now, at that point, what the Magdalene represented and the Nazarene could have had children together. But because of the fall, that couldn't happen. So, for the Nazarene to be born into a body that could hold that frequency in this physical form at that time in history fully, his paternal DNA had to be artificially inseminated, which is it was light can convey DNA, so can water. So it was used, a beam of light was used to, paternal DNA was artificially inseminated into his mother. Then his brother was born, that created a unique frequency, but it meant that he couldn't have children. He could be born into a physical body, but he couldn't have children and pass that on. But his brother James could, because he was born next
And
after
he
the mother,
had
and
right,
he
and
had the
he
same core frequency the Nazarene had, which was very unique
right.
because his cellular structure formed within that frequency. It was permanent with him.
So
If you
would you
went near the Nazarene, you would feel it
right,
and it would affect you, but it wouldn't be in your cellular DNA.
right.
However, with him, it was permanent.
So
So when he
so
had kids,
okay.
he was able to have children with the Magdalene, and that frequency was able to be held in the genetics of the bloodline.
So would you say that um the twin flame connection or well obviously originated there and continues through the bloodline, or is it something that's also handed off through our etheric connections, or
It's
matched frequencies
it's a
or
bit
that
of
type of thing?
both, but the twin flame is a specific physical bloodline. There
Okay.
are people who have been born throughout history who are in that genetic line. Just like, I mean, if you're gonna be born Asian, you need to be born into an Asian family, or your body's not going to look Asian,
Right.
etc. So there needs to be the physical incarnation, and that was done for a very specific purpose. But the etheric side of what that represents, that was done by the Nazarene. And the way Tom explained it to me, or God explained it to me, was he took it when he surrendered his life, which he could have stopped that execution at any point. He had
Mm-hmm.
that power to do it. He went with it because it was part of the purpose he was bringing in, which was to take a concentrated homeopathic dose of the truth of who all humans are into our collective subconscious, our collective consciousness, to help facilitate the transition, that moment where we reach critical mass. Now that's available to everybody because that's who we are. That was shut down out of our experience. We only
Right.
operate at 10%. Well, that energy represents us at full 100% capacity. So if you want to know what a human being is at full capacity, that's the Nazarene.
Right.
It's why
So
he put what he put into our. Now the twin flames are about taking that frequency into the consciousness
right.
and then creating a point where that pulls that frequency of the Nazarene up into the subconscious of every human on the planet at the right time,
So,
which is
so another, okay. So, in other words, the point of, let's just say, two such as that in this contemporary age, let's just say that, whenever they were between then and now, we'll say now since this is where we're at. So, the function of those two is to connect to such a level that the frequency is felt and pulls up, as you were saying, into the horizontal, which is the field. Okay.
that's
And
why we only needed four people to connect to God directly to trigger the 100th monkey effect. The combination of the Nazarene's energy imprint, the combination of that with the twin flame soulmates who are all around the world in that same bloodline. There are probably millions of us. I don't know how many, I've never been told. But anyway, thousands, tens of thousands, million, who knows? It only took four, though, to connect with God, to wake up to the truth. I can't keep doing this. I don't know what the problem is. I give my free will back to source. I'll just take a step out the front door and see what happens and go through a rite of passage, which we all went through at the same time, which lasted about 3.5 years, 4 years.
You're talking about
Then
COVID.
we all went through this same. We had to sort of be brought through a process of getting out of our own way enough
Right.
so that we can connect with each other and
Right.
not be repelled by each other, because twin flames are opposites. We're
Right.
about bringing the false idea that polarity is about conflict back into unity.
Right.
So we can't meet each other too soon in our own personal development, or we'll repel each other because of the effect of the conditioning that we've all had to take on. But we had to be born into a life where we break the stranglehold of conditioning over consciousness by going through our own free will choice to do that in our own life. And
Right.
then at a right point, we connect with each other and to amplify that to the next level. And
Right.
that's what happened in 97 when the four of us connected with Tom directly in that room. That was why it was all done. Now, the third element that made that critical was the fact that those of the interference chose to execute the Nazarene. The minute they did that, they said yes to being a part of that plan. So their energy, their
Right.
strategy, everything they've done ever since that moment has been about getting the human race to wake up, not the opposite.
Right.
They were,
Even though it looks like the opposite, it's
even though
having
it
the
looks like
opposite.
the
It's
opposite.
like COVID. Like COVID.
They
Perfect
were, they were
example.
tricked into playing their
Yeah.
entire playbook. They've
Yeah.
shown the human race every card they've got, every
Right.
step of the way, and now we're waking up to the truth, which means it can never happen again. And not
Wow.
only can it never happen again here, it can never happen again in the history of the universe that way. That's why the
Wow.
human race was put here. Because remember the imbalance that this dark and light thing, which has been playing out since the universe began, this universe has created imbalances throughout the whole fabric of space-time in
Yeah.
this universe. So
Yeah.
that's why it gets corrected, because we've pulled the physical foundation of the first three dimensions back in divine right alignment with the fifth dimension through direct experience. So they were tricked into doing that. Just that's why we're a trap. The human
Yeah.
race, I was told, the Nazarene as the hawk put us together in order to create the perfect setup for this dark element to be trapped and invert and brought back into divine right alignment. Darkness is simply an absence of light. It's what creates time, creates it. Darkness is just the moment of the truth of who we are we've yet to experience. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Love. So
Yes.
it's
Exactly.
that's what's playing out right now. It's inevitable. It can't happen any other way. The human race was put here deliberately to make sure that that was going to happen. And the Nazarene put it all together perfectly so that it would happen. And he set the trap 2,000 years ago, and the twin flames triggered it by choosing to get their life to work because they can't tolerate living a lie. And the reason that happens is because this is where the bloodline comes in. The way the inversion works is to shut us down from a conscious connection to fifth dimension, which is spiritual. Remember, the fourth dimension is a doorway between the
Hmm.
spiritual and the
Hmm.
physical self. It's meant to be fluid. There's no separation. So our conscious connection to the fifth dimension was shut right down to the point where we can't be aware of it.
Right.
What Nazarene did when he told James and the Magdalene to have a bloodline was set up a physical light space vehicle where that couldn't happen, where the conscious connection to 5D was too strong. The capacity to have a body mind exist in this paradigm that could do that they had the dark force, the dark element, those of interference had to choose it as well. They had to
Right.
be a part of the choice point. So the Nazarene offered them a choice:
Yeah.
turn back to the light right now. Don't take another step putting this corporation system together and you'll be redeemable. Separate from those of the interference, the human element this is, and everything will work out. Or plan B. Either way, it's happening. So you choose. And the way God described their experience, this is those of the interference of what's playing out right now and where it's taking us. He said, we would not like to be in their shoes. So you reckon it's hard on you?
So Yeah. So, okay. I totally get this. I'm with you. I just want to restate something because I think
Mm,
it's important. Uh, so, essentially, as the generations have gone by, especially now where it's culminated, and this has become a thing,
yeah,
whether
so
people
it's,
are aligned with the truth of it or they're in some kind of program or whatever, doesn't matter. What I'm trying to understand is the original template. And so I speak from some experience, all right? And so I'm trying to relate. But it sounds to me like that obviously the twins are polarity. They're
mm,
going to have a lot of friction, but they're also kind of catalyst, and that the design is that as individuals they will bring their life into alignment, and as they do that it strengthens the bond, you
connection.
might
Mm.
say, of them. What that looks like I don't know, but the energetic effect of that is what you described earlier, pulling up that light from that column of the T.
Well,
Would
for
that?
instance, when I went to the UK, my own personal experience, I woke up in the middle of the night. I could die right now and I wouldn't care, is what I was saying to myself when I woke up. Then I asked for help and I just went through this process. Walk out the front door, left or right, I'll turn left or right, depending. And then that took me through this insane, like Lord of the
I remember.
Rings
Yeah.
process
Yeah.
where I ended up speaking with God, and with three other people who went through the same process. And this is important. One of them was a girl who matched my twin flame, but wasn't. Now we had to meet and we had to do that at the right point. We were both at a certain point in our personal development where we could meet our twin flame, but we needed a sort of like a step down transformer to go to the next level.
Hmm.
We needed to meet to trigger the 100th monkey effect. But when I asked for help, my actual twin flame, who I'm married to now, went through the same process. She went one way through this connection with God, and I went a different way. She went the feminine, I went the masculine version. And I had to meet a twin flame who had the same astrology, the same birth chart, which is, and this particular birth chart is extremely rare. They had the same astrological dynamic. Um, he said of her, God said of her when we were meeting in this conversation, you are in denial. So she had a really hard time with me. She had a difficult time believing that I was the one, and that was the problem. And I had a difficult time feeling like I was worthy of being the one, and that was the problem. So by us connecting with that potential there, which I had no idea was really about, that's what it was about until it was playing out. And that had to happen. So for 3.5 months, it did something to both of us. Now,
Yeah.
we didn't stay together because
Right.
that wasn't really what was meant to happen. I went back to Australia. But because of that, I was
It cat.
called. We were because my wife and I lived when I asked for help, we were living a suburb away from each other. We could have met at any point, and we probably walked
Right.
past each other in the street.
But
But it
that
worked.
experience catalyzed you both as individuals, almost like
We
initiation or
attracted each
preparation.
other.
Yeah.
Yes. What she
But
did.
yeah. But that 3.5 month period was like a catalytic event that was kind of like initiation preparation for like in your case for you to connect with your wife.
And we called each other to each other. She
Yeah.
was basically at a point in her life where she was um, open enough to the truth being what it is, no matter what. And me, vice versa. We always were, but we were conscious of it in a certain way. So that
Yes.
frequency, the twin flames being about unity, was
Right.
very powerful. So we
Right.
connected physically and we
Right.
were able to connect physically. Now it was tough too. I mean, I felt this presence standing behind me everywhere I went for about 6 to 8 weeks before we met. And when I was driving in the car to the place where she was living, where we physically met, this person was sitting in the back seat of the car behind me. No one there, of course.
Of
By the
course.
time we got there, it was so strong I couldn't go inside the building. I could feel this polar opposite thing presence in the building, and I was in the car park. Finally, I went inside. We stayed away from each other for about the first day, and then finally we she broke the surface tension. This is ridiculous. Who are you? And that popped it. And then she chose me, and then the rest is history. But that we had to be at a certain point in our life individually for that connection to work. And
Of
then
course.
since then, it's been about going to a whole other level, whole other level of
I'm
undoing the
sure.
conditioning
I'm
we were
sure it
all
has.
given. We were both given. But that again, just to get to your question, the energetic impact of that for the human race as a whole, where is to bring that scenario into physical form. How do you reverse an inversion that's never happened in the history of the universe before?
Exactly.
How do you come
Nuke.
back? Arcturian said to me once, I was on my knees in 2018, and I said, "Why us?" And they said someone had to be first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is again why I was struggling with this sole purpose. And the Arcturians told me 2 years ago, you need to speak publicly now. And
Yeah.
I was really struggling with how do I say all of this in a way that doesn't sound like, you know, wrong way, and I was really struggling with it. And then they came in really strongly. So I've spoken to them 3 times physically, and the rest of the time it's astral projection, which is the fifth dimension.
Hmm.
And they showed me that infinite mosaic image of the universe and soul purposes. Each purpose, each soul was a tile. And they said, without every tile, the picture is incomplete. How do you value one above another? So it's not like me saying all of this makes a twin flame like wow, and everyone else is. It's not like that at all.
No,
Everyone's the
you're doing
same.
a great job. You're doing a great job.
Everyone's the same. So it's just about triggering a ripple effect that everyone was always capable of, but we'd always been messed with. It interfered. The control narrative has stopped us unifying throughout history. This setup was done to break that stranglehold and to write the book on how to move through the transition. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
What does it look like?
Well, you create new code.
Pardon?
I said you create new code by going through a door that's never
And
been
crack the
gone
code.
through.
Crack the
And
code.
and
Yeah.
so and the other thing that I feel that you're bringing to light, obviously, is in that mosaic. Uh, every individual is an intricate piece, an essential
Different.
piece of the whole. But also,
Yeah.
the same would hold true for the twins. Like
Yes.
that's
The,
another. So however many pairs there are, like you said, there's a the piece there. I think another part of what you're talking about, in particular on this subject, and again, I speak from some experience, of quite a bit, is that I really feel it's important, and I'm so glad that you've stepped out, and I'm so glad to be able to provide the space that you can feel comfortable because you're doing a great job. But that is, as you're explaining everything, it's bringing in a different element. It's been such a mind fuck for everybody that we so literalize things, that we were so conditioned and programmed that as we're coming out of this thing and getting this higher information, et cetera, we still have our doubts. We still fall back. Like me today. I started laughing a minute ago when you were retelling the story about, what you said, and then you walked out, I'm going to go right or left, because it's exactly what I said to myself today. I was like, I was like, I'm done. Show me what you want me to do. I surrender. I fucking surrender. I don't know anything. Just show me because I can feel it. Especially
yeah.
now, it's even getting stronger talking to you. But I didn't do the left to right thing. I guess I did in a way
Yeah.
because
There's
of
lots of
what
ways to do
of
it.
what happened. It was a choice, and I was shown. And then, like I said, the lift came, and then I started getting to work. But yeah, I feel like that's important information, verbalized, because I would imagine I've met so many people in my work that have had either have had a preparatory twin connection or a true twin connection, and probably 99% of them couldn't say with 100% certainty that they're right about any of it. But that's definitely in the field. It's definitely there, and I believe your commentary, about the equally the human experience, but also that higher guidance, soul experience that so many of us have had, if not all of us have had, that have brought us together over the years, is both to be considered and to be heard. Because I don't hear people talking about this. I hear people talking about the story, like how they met, or some of the other things. I've experienced it quite a bit, and it's been quite public over the years. But to hear somebody tie it in together to the grand scheme of things, I believe is a sign of the times, because it
Precisely.
only makes sense to me that when that was laid down, like I said last week, we came into this thing with all these things. We came into this thing in our field as a soul, as a twin, say sacred union, as Trinity energy. We came in as the whole. But to go into this dense physical experience, it always made sense to me. Obviously, it comes from the individual first, right? But it always made sense to me that you would have a physical mirror in this density, and you would basically unify. How can you be? How can you meet conscious unity consciousness with 100 people if you can't do it with one other one? You know what I mean? So it
Yeah.
only made sense to me. And so I'm really, really enthralled that you're able to articulate this so well. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The whole, I mean, how do you let go of control? I mean, I've got that example where I just sort of would shut my eyes and say left or right, and I just walk through life that way. I was alone and I traveled the world doing that, basically living moment to moment. But it's simply by being willing not to know, being in situations that are very familiar, that the pattern of how you perceive them is extremely familiar, and coming to a new add a fifth element. I don't know what the truth is, though. I don't know that the way I've always seen this is really true. That's how you let go of control. As soon as you do that, there are several movies that were brought into the human race through Tom, through God directly. They were soul contracts, because the media is the control narrative. So the counterbalance to the control narrative coming from the divine, they have to allow the truth in. So they don't have total control of the narrative. They have control of the narrative, but they can't. Anyway, so there were several of them, but the three that I'll pop in, well, one was Star Wars. So George Lucas had a soul contract, I was told. That was described to me in the 3.5 months between these two conversations, where I was with the nine group that put the book together. And they've been speaking with Tom, some of them for 30, 40 years, and had many, many, many thousands of hours of conversations about the reality on a whole other level to the people that were in the book. Too, by the way, the only planet of choice. They took it way deeper with Tom. So their understanding of this dynamic, I was around them for 3.5 months, was phenomenal. So they told me about what he described, how he described Star Wars. He called it the story of the universe. So it symbolically holds the whole experience. So the twin flame, for instance, in Star Wars, are represented by Luke, Leia, and Han Solo. So Luke and Leia are twin souls, where they're two, a masculine and feminine aspect of one soul. So they the feminine masculine expression of soul, and what you would call soulmates, left standing shoulder to shoulder. But Leia and Han Solo are twin flames, and when they first meet, they're very different, and they have this sort of repellent kind of relationship for a while. But it's because of their connection that the whole process really plays out to its depth. Um, Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one chosen to bring balance back to the Force, becomes Darth Vader. Well, that's the ego, and the ego that controls the relationship between the two. But that he symbolizes the human race as well. So we were the chosen, we were put together specifically in order, like, how does Anakin Skywalker fulfill his sole purpose of bringing balance back to the Force? When you see him become Darth Vader, it looks like he's gone in the complete opposite direction to that.
Mm.
That's exactly how he did do it. He
Yeah.
became the ego that controls. He went all the way to the core, to the Emperor, which is the empire is the opposite of federation. So the rebel fleet are a federation. Civilization is a federation against the empire, who's big. They project this big image of themselves. Everything's faceless, identity. You lose your identity to it. It all becomes one thing and it's big. That's a show to make it look bigger than it really is. The emperor is non-physical, ethereal, but it needs physical form to be real. So the
Hmm.
whole game of why the emperor pulled Vader into the dark side all the way to the core was about facilitating that. So the
Yeah.
end game was going to be he wanted Luke, the one that fell, wanted Luke and his father Darth Vader to fight it off to the death. So
Hmm.
he wanted symbolically what the outcome would have been was for Luke to kill his father and to replace him. That would have been the choice
And
point
then the
to
twins.
sever his heart connection to God
Yeah.
and give it all
Yeah.
to the Emperor and
Right.
become a light space vehicle like the Borg drones in Star
Yeah.
Trek to
Yeah.
become a vehicle for the inversion to become a vehicle for the one that fell to become physical to give his free will to that choice which no one would be able to interfere with then God wouldn't be able to interfere with that was the end game but instead he gets to the point where Vader's on the ground and he could kill him because that symbolizes if you kill your father, you can't exist.
Right.
So symbolically, you choose death to be your life. You go against life fully by killing your father. It's a representation of that. Instead, he surrenders, and Vader's watching the whole thing. He could have died, but he clicks. He goes click click click. You can see him looking from Luke, looking to the Emperor, looking backwards and forwards, and it's like he sees the whole thing clearly. Suddenly, he goes, "Oh, that's what it was about,"
Which
and he
was him.
gets
Which was him. Right.
well, he sees what the strategy he was pulled into. He was being
Oh, I
delusional,
see.
but he was put together in such a way that he could take going that far to the dark without completely losing the light.
Right.
So that manifested by him clicking and going, "Oh, now I see," which is light, realization.
Right.
He
Right.
saw the truth, which is awareness. He brought awareness into his darkness, which caused him to go that far. He realized what the full story was and then he gets up, picks up the emperor, and throws him into the abyss. And that's what he gives his life to that. You know, Luke pulls his mask off and says, which is symbolic of him coming back, ugly as he was, and says, "I can save you, Father." And Luke Vader says, "You already have." And that's it. The whole thing ends because that's the whole end game. That's
Wow.
the point we're at now is we're shedding this false identity called the ego that controls, which has kept us locked in victim perpetrator.
Right.
That's what the Arcturians told me. The last point where polarity is in conflict with each other is victim perpetrator, and every human being has been brought to that last point where we feel like we're a victim of life because we're unconscious and all the distortion comes out sideways through behavior patterns that we're not conscious of, we become perpetrators of the very thing that we feel a victim of without
Yeah.
realizing. We become controlling, we become this, the conditioning comes out of us when we're parents and
Yeah.
we turn into clones of our parents without realizing it, etc. There's all sorts of ways that
Yeah.
plays out.
And we become,
But
yeah. And you see and we've all been there at least at points in our lives, I
well,
mean,
we're
there's
going to
layers to
see.
every, but you know what I mean? Like you have a connection or whatever, or a conversation, and you're getting exactly that, but you're not, you know what I mean? I mean, that's coming at you. The finger pointing is what I'm talking about. The what did you call it? The oppressor or perpetrator. The perpetrator energy is coming at you, so you're the victim. It's kind of like narcissist empath. Like,
Well, it's projection. We project
yeah,
we
yeah, you're
project the
projecting. Yeah,
problem out there and try to
right.
fix it. And
Yeah,
in so
when it,
doing, we just become perpetrators of the problem.
so it's actually like the Darth. When you were saying the Darth Vader thing, like I can see it. Like he came from the one end of the light, went
All
all
the
the
way through
way to the far end of the deepest darkness,
and
comes like
back.
like a pendulum, comes back to the middle, sees it all as, yeah. So and sees,
And
like when he saw the emperor, that was within the experience. It wasn't. It was in other words, he saw what was going on and how he was stuck on the grid, or locked into that perception that wasn't even real.
He
basically.
woke up to the truth of who he is,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
symbolically, that's represented by him putting the emperor back where he came from, which is nowhere. There is no darkness.
exactly.
And doing that, he went back, he transitioned like the Nazarene back into his true form,
Right. And then
which is,
the emperor, yeah, because I mean, there's all different, you know, cultures and civilizations that have talked, like the archons in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Like 25% of that, those the Nagamati and the there, it's about the archons, which can't take form, right? They can't take form, just like the emperor can't take form, right?
the
Um,
archons are really the sum total creative energy of fear of the entire, all self-aware life
right.
throughout the galaxy,
But
especially
basically like an extrapolation of that one particular entity that you were talking about as an example, the emperor.
yes, it's just
Like
it's
it's just
just
an extrapolation of it.
what is
It's
the one that fell
yeah,
is shadow. It's
right,
a shadow of a
right,
belief,
yeah,
and that's just replicated throughout. But it needs a self-aware life to believe in its
yeah,
existence for it to
yes.
exist. Without
So
us
which
believing in it, it can't
yeah,
exist.
which is another metaphor would be like the persuasiveness of the devil. Like
Well,
convincing.
that's yeah. I
You know,
mean,
you know what
convincing
I mean?
us to make
Because
it
you're not
feel
because it yeah once that's done, which going back to COVID, if you really look back at COVID now and you look at it, it's that energy. They can't do anything unless we agree to it.
precisely.
And it also gives me great reverence for the humanity. Even though 65-70% took jabs, apparently, it doesn't alter the fact of the power, the energetic power and evolution and transcendence of humanity as a spirit, soul, mind, body. You know what I mean? Like it's game on. Like that could have been. Was that? Do you? Oh no, you said 1997. Okay, 1990, which would make sense because right after that was 9/11, right? And then there was a few more false flags, but I think COVID really woke people up. And we're
Yeah.
still
Well, I
coming to
mean,
we're still coming to terms with it. A
that's
lot of people.
a chain of events happened from 97 onwards, but that was timed in the subconscious level.
Hmm.
Uh, because the paradigm shift we're going through has to be subconscious first. Our paradigm is locked. It's like we become conscious. Think of it as a cone shape. The root of our paradigm is subconscious. So the reason we can't change it consciously is we can't change anything consciously unless we deal with the root cause of the problem. So
There you
within
go.
us, it's false belief that
Right.
we aren't right as we are, self-doubt. That's the mother of all fear.
Wait, you just
Self-doubt.
said you just said something profound. Okay, because again, having done the work I've been doing all these years, I've talked to a lot of practitioners. Okay, and and I don't know, I might have to sit with this a little bit, but what I'm getting is this: the processes and so on, although some are designed to tap into the subconscious, it's the conscious mind that flips the switch. It's kind of
Yes.
what I'm seeing,
Right.
and what
Dark
you're
becomes light.
right? So what you're saying is that say the intention and maybe even some of them are worthwhile and they were successful to whatever degree because they're able to tap into the subconscious and bring something out, like old memories or things that you blacked out. But going back to what you started, what we opened the show with, what you opened the show with when you were talking, it's kind of what I wanted to end with. So here we go. I mean, this is you can't make up these synchronicities. So, what in your mind is happening to us when in our so-called dream state that is involving the subconscious mind? Do you have anything that you can explain to us or shed light on what is actually happening, the mechanics of that, what's going on?
Well, the reason we have dreams, particularly when they don't make any sense and are hard to remember, is because the truth of who we are, you could say our higher self, the full awareness of the truth of who we are, is communicating the difference between who we really are and our subconscious understanding. So that's why it's all disparate. So as soon as you ask the question, what's going on, some of us did it. Like I've got a great friend, Katie, for instance. She's been going through this since we met. She's been going through this about 5, 6 years. she hit the wall basically and met death. And she's been fighting the desire to leave the planet ever since. But that process was brought on by a question, what the hell is going on? Why do I feel this way? As
Mm-hmm.
soon as she asked that question, she started going through a process of having her subconscious rearranged because she was willing to allow a gap that wasn't there before. That has a profound impact on the foundation of our belief system. Now, you're not going to be aware of the change that's going on, but there is one. So for that 5 years, we've been speaking for about 2.5 years directly. But the entire time that's gone on, she hasn't really understood the power of what that choice has done because she hasn't been aware of the impact it's had.
Right.
That's the whole point. All of us have
Right.
been going through that.
Right.
Subconscious layer has been rearranged simply because you're willing not to know what the problem is. Asking you shall receive. So what's been happening is the answer to that question has been coming to us in our own experiences of life.
I got
But
you.
because we're not conscious of what it is in the way we think that's causing the split, we're not aware that that's what's happening. It just looks like life is happening still. We're not really connected consciously to the direct impact that those experiences are having on our subconscious, but that's going to start to shift.
I
So
got you.
because of that, what happens is your ability to see things differently. It's like an epiphany. First, that
Yeah.
shift energy has to build up in your subconscious, and then some catalyst will come along that will pull it together, it crystallizes. So
Right.
you'll jump up a layer in your awareness. And
Well,
that process
that
will
makes
keep
sense.
happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. That feels right too. I mean, obviously, there's been a pattern. People will say, "Oh, it has to happen in the energetic field first, and then it happens in the physicality," and you figure out what happened.
Subconscious,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
outside your awareness.
yeah. So, but yeah, I can see this. Because I can even, I've noticed that over this summer that there is some kind of cohesiveness. It's not so fragmented. Like the dreams are actually kind of connected. I can't always connect them, but there seems to be like a story to it or something like that. Like I'll give you an example. Like a few days ago, it was uh, a group of us, and it'd been the same kind of atmosphere for 3 or 4 days, kind of a spaceship atmosphere or a Star Wars looking type of atmosphere. And we were coming down here, and it was an element of time travel. But in that particular dream, it was a group of us coming down here to go back in time because 8 of the team members had been killed. Okay, so and then it played out a little bit. When I got up and I started to write about it and think about it, I started to see these different illusionary archetypes that I had that were, it was almost like looking back, again, time travel, looking back and seeing these pieces of me that had been prominent fixtures that had died, basically.
That, yeah, because they weren't really serving you, even though you thought they were. So
Right.
we have a lot of sacred cows in our belief
Mm,
system
mm,
that we attribute our spiritual nature to. For instance, they can be really hard to let go of.
yeah.
But if they're not really serving us or what we think they are, then they will leave our field. And the experiences that we're having are repeat patterns. It'll keep on
Right.
drawing to that. Those false beliefs will keep on drawing the solution to you in direct experience until you realize that that's what's happening.
Right.
You click, oh, now I see, because you'll start to see the pattern. So there's this repetition. It feels like Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Quite often, the
Yeah.
ego death, it's like we have this repetition of experiences simply because it's happening on such a subconscious level. It's hard for us to connect the dots that
Yeah.
what we're experiencing is the help we've asked for. It looks
But you,
like the opposite a lot of the time,
but you
and
see,
that's
you
what
see, you
people
see a
find
lot of
hard.
it. Yeah, you see a lot of it in the community over the years I have, which is some commonalities, such as I would say, like an over identification with being an empath. I would also say and I'm using this term, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, but over identification with being a giver, like giving, giving, giving to build up our own self worth because of our low self esteem, you might say, and so it's all the same thing. It's interesting talking to you
It's
because
all down.
you can see it. Yeah, you can see it in everybody,
It's
which
all
is,
these
you know what I mean?
identities we've built
Yeah,
up or beliefs
yeah,
we've built up to manage self doubt have become we identify ourselves around that with all of that. So being stripped of it, it feels like we're being pulled apart, which literally. And of course, you're
Yeah.
going to fight that because you don't know
Yeah.
which bits are real and which bits aren't. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It's confusing and you can't
Well,
control it.
well, it's like
But
you said. It's like you said earlier. Somebody says something to you, you immediately go into reaction. You know, like you're this or you're doing that. No, I'm not. You know, like you said about the masculine in the ages 1 through 9, where or the steps 1 through 9,
yeah,
where they can that part of us can rise above it and take a breath and look at it
and
objectively.
and we can hold the space for
Right.
the reactionaryism, the feeling of
Right.
wanting to negate
Right.
what that person is saying or what that experience is saying because we don't want to own it,
Yeah.
and still hold the space for that feeling to be there without
Right.
trying to do anything with it, get rid of
Yes.
it, or blame
That's
anyone
right.
for it.
Yes.
Even though
Yes.
the stories are saying it, just having the question, what's the truth? Because the thing about hitting the wall properly, the hitting this transition properly is that you once you get to the question, you to the point where you could die right now and keep going. Hang on a second. Um,
I must be headed for something
reach
because I see.
that point, that question's got you forever because
Yeah.
it's touched you at the core of the point you were born into this life. It's that
Mm,
it's deep,
mm,
life or death. The moment you incarnated, what is that? That question, the self that asked that question comes from that same point. So every single layer of your experience of life above
mm,
that is now being held in that question.
mm.
Right.
Wow.
So
Mm.
that means that, sorry, can you hear me? Are you hearing that sound? There's someone pressure spraying the roof above me.
Oh no, I can barely hear it. We can
Oh,
barely hear
good,
it.
good. Yeah. Because that's there, you can't unsee that moment. That's got you forever now. That question will not leave you alone for the rest of your life. You are making a
It's like you
transition,
you
full
put
stop
the
in the
yeah
story.
you put
It doesn't matter how sacred the belief system is, how much you hold on to it, life will
yeah
make sure that you loosen your grip. And the more willing you are to see it that way, the faster and cleaner you'll move through it. But it won't be easy. We can't go around the darkness. We have to go
no
through it. It's not
you
what we
can't
think.
you can't miss a step.
Now, I just want to say that there were four modalities brought into after my wife and I met. We went through a process of four modalities being brought to us that are specifically designed to help people move through the transition. That relates to this whole process. And the first was Ramana Maharshi, which is satsang, which the Arcturians call true north,
Mm,
path of self-inquiry. If you want to know what the problem is, look at your own thinking. So looking at Ramana Maharshi, he was a 14-year-old schoolboy in India at the turn of the 1900s, turn of the century, 1800s into 1900s in India, horse and cart time. And he was on his way to school, and a horse and cart had fallen out, turned over, and killed the driver about a few minutes before he got there. So the body was still on the side of the road with its eyes open as he went past. They hadn't had time to clear it up yet, and he saw this fact that the body was there, dead. So the eyes were open, but there was no light. It was like something wasn't there anymore. Something had left the body, but everything else was there, and it caused him to, well, what are we? Are we the something that left this body, or are we the body? And because he was so young, he had not much left in the way. He woke up. Oh, we're the spirit that the body that inhabits the body. We aren't the body. And he just spontaneously came back to the truth of who he is. And that's how the path of self-inquiry
Can,
came in.
can we
Then,
can we? I don't want to. The thing is, I've got another show coming,
oh, right.
no, I'm just saying. I feel like this would be a great place to start. The next show would be. I'm not being presumptuous. The next time that you're able to be with us, which I'd love to do it again next week, if you want to,
Yeah,
we could start with these four modalities. Because that was the first one, right? Okay.
yeah.
So
I can tell you what the other three are, and then we'll explain them
right.
next week if you want.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, there's True North, 12 o'clock is Path of Self-Inquiry, Ramana Maharshi. Byron Katie, it's not about the person, it's about the principle they've brought in, which is question the story. It's a methodology of how to do that. All your belief systems, all your judgments of other people are self-judgment. They're really coming from your judgment of yourself. So those people that trigger you, describe them, go to town on them, judge your neighbor, go to town on them, and then flip it around. There's a way to turn the story around and decode it so you can see your own, become conscious of your own self-judgment. That then David Deida, which he brought in again, not the person, it's not about the person, it's about the principle of how to get sacred masculine, divine feminine back in divine right order. He wrote a book called The Way of the Superior Man, which describes the sacred masculine, that gives you a good reference point for that principle. And then the other one, powerful, was Bert Hellinger, who brought in system constellation work, which is about breaking the stranglehold of the conditioning throughout our family line,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is a big part of the interference. They embed trauma into family systems, which
Right.
means souls being born in have to fix that first before they can live the life they were born to live. So
Right.
the combination of those four put our compass bearing back into divine right order. We work with those four modalities as we go through this transition. It speeds everything up massively.
Far out. Far out. Yeah, that's do you want to do something next week or you want to wait 2 weeks?
Yeah,
Next week? Okay, I
let's do
just
it next week. Yeah,
all right, man. I'm game. We have somebody asked me a question here and I'd love to do it.
yeah,
And I know you know her, I think. And that is uh let's see. Can consider having Katie Kiss on your podcast.
yes.
So if
I
if
think.
you have my email, if you would just you know her? You know her. That's the one you were
Oh,
talking about.
okay. Yeah, look,
Okay.
Katie and I have been, she's been, yeah,
Okay. So yeah, so let's if you wouldn't mind doing me a favor and just giving her my email and that way her and I can make contact and I certainly will get her on here. And anyone else that you feel would be good on here, just let me know and we'll just keep on trucking, man.
definitely do Katie Kiss. And I think you, me, and her together talking on one
Okay. Well,
would be
if y'all want to do that
really
next
worth
week, we
doing.
can do that next week
Yeah,
too.
well, let's do that next
If
week
it's time.
because
Okay.
she's helped me get a handle on what when you say, well, tell us your story, she's helped me get a handle on that by asking me questions for 2.5 years.
Okay.
That's
uh,
the
Okay.
Arcturian's brought us together so that it can help me get to a point where I can actually describe what I've been living through.
Far out. Far out. So this is great, man.
He's really
Thank
good
you
at it.
so much. I'm so happy to have this even for my personal, comprehension and alignment, with the things that happened to me today, there's no coincidences anymore. It's just so weird talking to you, but it's not. I think this is becoming the new normal. But yeah, thank you so much, and blessings of peace and grace and love to you and your family. And I'll see you and Katie next same time next week.
Same
Okay.
time next week. Thanks so much, Todd. Been
All
great
all right,
talking
man.
to you
Take
about
care.
this.
All right. See
See
you
ya.
later.